All right. Where do you want to start this thing, man? I think we got a whole gang of stuff on the last episode. So if people want to know about you, they can know about you there.
Yeah.
What happened to your neck?
So my neck has, I have 3 bulge discs in my C-spine. So you've got your lumbar spine, that's your lower back. You've got your T-spine, your thoracic, that's your middle back. And then you've got your C-spine, that's your upper back and basically your neck, right? So I have 3 bulge discs. There's 1 bulge disc at the C7 between C7 and T1 level. And in between those is a C8 nerve root. So the disc is pressing out on the nerve root at C8 and shutting my hand down and causing me large of pain, mate.
And this was part of a string of like long injuries from your psoas and stuff over the last year or so.
Yeah, so I hurt my psoas 2024 in July. I tore my psoas, which super sucks. Don't do it. And then as soon as that basically got better, I did something to my neck. And I think this is a lot of years ago. I did this. It was like a regional, decent sized tournament in Idaho and Boise. And, it was like any jiu-jitsu tournament. Like it was a kind of a bigger one. It was cool. Like lots of great competitors, but obviously low budget, you know? So we just had like almost like puzzle mats on a gym floor. And the first guy I went against, he was probably had to be like 6'3". He was a wrestler from North Carolina, and there was like no slams, right?
Mm-hmm.
As part of the rule set, no slams. And he suplexed me immediately. So he arm drug me, like took my back. I was like, I'm such a relaxed competitor, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times it takes me a while to get started.
Okay. We're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was like, okay, he's got my back. Like, but he just immediately suplexed me, just jumped up in the air. I have a photo of like his foot is like a foot off the air, and my feet are like kicked up, like a total surprise. Normally, I would have hooked his leg,
right?
Like, but there was no slams allowed, So I'm like, yeah, you can't do it, which is a lesson to not ever rely on the rules to protect you. That was my bad. But he slammed me. And I remember that pain. This is one and only time I've ever intentionally hurt somebody in jiu-jitsu. I was very pissed. But I landed right on the back of my neck, all the pain right through my shoulder blade, pretty much everywhere where the pain is.
Yeah.
Was from that or matched that. So I'm guessing that was probably the beginning, and then just over time, like I've got bone spurs, and that's what happens is there's a foraminal narrowing. So the foramen, I'm an expert at this now.
I'd imagine.
But is basically where your nerve is passing through. And so it's got some space. Your nerve passes through. It's all good. But when there's foraminal narrowing, so you get bone spurs, that hole starts to close, starts to get tighter. Well, then when you also introduce a disc bulge to it, now it's like shoving your nerve up against the side of what already doesn't have enough room.
Right.
And so that's what's happening with my neck. That dude, by the way, I recovered. He almost knocked me out. I was glad he didn't. And I was also glad they didn't call it, because what he did was illegal. They could have called it, and I would have won by default, which I would have hated. But I put him in a very, very nasty Kimura and put his freaking hand like behind his head.
Did you rip it?
Oh my gosh, dude. I was so mad. I almost spit on him.
Really?
I was like, that was so unnecessary. And I knew, I'm like, what I am now is hurt for the next 6 months minimum.
For sure.
I'm out of this tournament. You know what I mean? Which I kept going on the tournament, but I wasn't super competitive. But anyway, yeah, dude, I stepped over his head. I didn't even bother passing half guard. He had half guard. Like I swept. He had half guard. I ripped this Kimura, and I just like picked it up. I remember there's a video of it somewhere I could show you, but I like put my whole chest on it, lifted like it was a deadlift, and just went until it like, you find that like stop point.
Yeah.
And then I just like turned up, like throttle forward, turned up, and I could hear like his shoulder going, and he just screamed and he started crying. And Anyway, I hope you're thinking about me, dude, because I'm thinking about you. So anyway, that's been going on all year. So I've had like numbness and been losing strength in my fingers all year long. And on this recent trip to Juarez, we do this mission trip where we go down there and teach jiu-jitsu to kids at this church down there. And on the ride down there, we drove from Sheridan to Albuquerque, and that kind of bothered it. And then I slept on the floor at this church with the group, and I just woke up from that, and like pretty much since then it's just been a rodeo. But yeah, I woke up from that in pretty much 10 out of 10 pain, like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 pain, as much as I could bear. I immediately got up and went to this shower room, which no one knows about. I've kept it secret a lot of years. We've been doing this trip a lot of years, and I just don't tell anybody so that I can, because the hot water lasts like 10 seconds. But I went up there and I just put cold water on it. And the cold water, like, you know, when you jump in cold water and you have to catch your breath, like it was making me like have to breathe like that. It was like making me tense up, and I could feel myself like almost going out, like almost passing out. And I was like, dude, no one knows where I'm at. It's like 4 a.m, you know, like
I'm in Juarez.
Well, no, we're in Albuquerque at this point.
Gotcha.
But nobody knew where I'm like, I'm going to pass out in the shower, butt naked, maybe drown.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, worst case scenario, drown, I guess.
Yeah.
Best case scenario, these guys have to come find me unconscious, butt naked, and drag me out of here. And it's going to be a while because no one's going to wake up till 6, you know? Anyway. So I was like having to be like consciously keep myself conscious, which was an interesting practice, but that was the level of pain. And then pretty much like I stayed between 7 and 10 out of 10 pain for the next 5 days. So we ended up going down to Juarez. We went to breakfast. Like I calmed. At first I was like, dude, I got to go to the hospital. Something's definitely wrong.
Yeah.
You know, but I got some, you know, I took some ibuprofen and some Tylenol, and we went to breakfast, and I was like, it'll probably be okay. You know, I just needed to walk around. I was like, maybe I just slept on it wrong because it's been doing okay. And it just got worse, dude, and worse and worse.
When you're starting to deal with that pain, I feel like doing jiu-jitsu and MMA and all of that kind of stuff, you get used to being just banged up a little bit. And sometimes even when you've got that crazy pain, it's like, okay, yeah, but once I walk around for a little bit, or if I work out, or if I do, like, it's always just like, yeah, something's going to fix this that isn't me, and like, whatever. Did you have that thought at the time, or was it like, oh, we're going to be in this for a bit?
I just had prayers. I live on high hopes. And so I was like, it'll be all right. We'll get down there. I'll get some Mexican drugs, you know, like hopefully I can get some like super anti-inflammatory or something. And so we got down there, and we did. We went to the pharmacy, and I was like, hey, what do you guys got? And I was like, it's real bad, you know, which is crazy that when you go to a Mexican pharmacy, it's very different, obviously, than being here. Here, you know, you can get ibuprofen. That's about as good as it gets. They're like, oh, you could take this. And I'm like, okay, what is that? And it's basically like the equivalent of Tylenol.
Right.
And then I'm like, no, I'm mucho ouchie, my dude. And then they gave me like, okay, this is a steroid plus an anti-inflammatory plus a muscle relaxer. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about.
Now we're talking.
Yeah. Throw that down. So, oh geez, even like recalling this process, I can literally feel it's like, yeah, it's funny, dude. So anyway, they gave me that, and I was like, okay, cool. I'll be better by tomorrow. And then that night, and I was feeling okay. Like it was feeling, you know, it was down to like 6, 7, if you will. And we went to go to bed that night, and I like made my bed, you know, I put 2 pads down so I could, you know, and then I put them on a cot because they were like, you're not going to sleep on the floor. I'm like, oh, I got 2 pads. I sleep on the floor a lot. I was like, I put 2 pads down. Like, no, you need something. So I put them on a cot, and I laid down. Just as soon as I laid down, it just shot, dude. It just was like so bad that like, you know, I had to get up. And then I got up, walked around for a little while, tried laying down a different way, tried laying it down a different way. Pretty soon, I'm just outside walking, like just all night long. Literally just all night. It just kept getting worse and worse, floating between like 8 and 9. And it was like at 8 as long as I was walking. But as soon as I would lay down or sit down, or if I did that, it would shoot to a 9, like, and like just rip me back up. So I just spent that entire night walking until the morning. Jeremy's wife, Amy, got up and, you know, she walked out and she's like, have you been up all night? I'm like, yep. And she's like, are you okay? And I was like, nope. And, yeah. And then, you know, at that point I was kind of like, there's something wrong. Like, this is not, didn't get the drugs they gave me that they said were pretty intense, literally didn't do a thing. Like, they didn't do a thing. Or if they did, I'm really glad I took them, because it would have been real bad. And so I was like, this is different. And this was different than it had ever been. So it got kind of bad mid-year, but not this bad. I was on a road trip and had to drive home, and driving was kind of the worst thing for it. And that was the first time that's when I went and got an MRI and figured out what was going on. You know, before that, it was just like, well, maybe this, maybe that. Mm-hmm. We can kind of speculate. The cool thing about pain and nerves is like everything maps, right? So if you look at a body and you're looking at all the nerve routes, you could see C8, and I could like, without having a clue, I could just paint you a picture of the pain, or like paint, you know, a color where it hurts, and I would nail the C8 nerve root.
Gotcha.
So you kind of like have a map. You already kind of know, and I did already kind of know, but when I got back, I got that MRI and confirmed it. But even still, it had not been this bad. This is as bad as it has been.
When you're walking around at all hours of the night in Juarez, and you're just down there, like, you know, at an 8 or a 9 the whole time, what's going on in your head? Is it the kind of pain where it's the only thing that you can focus on? Like, what?
Oh yeah.
What's going on in the mental at that point?
Yeah. So it was, you know, by the end of it, it became a spiritual experience. You know, like, I labeled it just sessions with God, and have pretty much spent every night since then in these sessions. Like, I wake up, you know, like lately I've been able to fall asleep for a couple hours, 3-4 hours. And then I just wake up and I'm like, all right, we're in session, and I'm just going to sit with God and work on hearing him, and work on listening, and work on that dialogue, which has been a special experience. It's a big part of the meaning that I take from this whole experience. But yeah, there was no escape from the pain. There was no moving away from it. You know, there was no solve for a while. There was like one position I could lay in that was okay, but you had to pay for it every time. So every time I stood up out of that position, I was stuck basically. And getting back out of stuckness was like so much pain. You know, you just paid acutely for this. Like, so there was no getting away from it. And it's very long. You know, you're laying there, like, everybody go to bed down there like 10-ish, and wake up 6, 7. And so, like, it's just a long time, you know, especially when you're literally like, how long was that? Like, that was 7 seconds.
Yeah, it's like being in a minute plank. That minute gets really long.
Exactly. Yeah, and it felt exactly like that. Like, I was just in it the whole time. I had to remind myself to breathe, you know, like, and breathing hurt. And so, anyway, what runs through your head, man, is like, I mean, everything, every thought that I could think, you know, and at first you're like, how do I get out of this? What is the way to get out? And you search for every method to possibly get out of it. And I couldn't find any, you know, there was no reprieve. There was no way out while I was down there. And I'm like, dude, I'm in Juarez. So some people were like, why didn't you just fly home? I'm like, dude, the thought of crossing the border, of getting up and like going anywhere.
Right.
Like, all I could think about was just like, how do I just, you know, I'm just like laying around, sitting around, finding all these different places to just exist. I don't want to look at light or be, you know, I don't want any of that. So yeah, you go from that, and then you go, okay, I can't get out of this. What does this mean? Why am I here? Why is this happening to me? You know, how did I get here? How do I not get here again? And those thoughts sort of progress into like, do you know Viktor Frankl? Are you familiar with Viktor
Love
Frankl?
Viktor Frankl, yeah.
So, Man's Search for Meaning, might be my favorite book for various reasons. But so he's sort of famous for talking about, there's a quote that he has that says, when a man can't find or struggles to find purpose, he'll distract himself with pleasure. Kind of lesser known or lesser talked about is the inverse of that, which is that when a man struggles to find joy or happiness or eudaimonia, like they distract themselves or they immerse themselves with purpose.
Yep.
Right? They have to create they have to create a meaning from their pain. And for me, like, whether or not I had to create a meaning for my pain or there just genuinely was a meaning for my pain, that pain evolved and that experience evolved into just me facing, like having to look in the mirror for a very long time, which is something, a lot of us will avoid, and will avoid it in any, distract myself with pleasure, or even just distract myself with homeostasis, distract myself with familiarity, even if it's not maybe pleasure. But in those moments, in those nights, in that time, there was no place to go. And so I sought meaning, and that meaning became these conversations with God, these like talks with, what am I doing here? Why am I here? Why am I in this place? And it was very interesting because the mission that we're doing, we're there to serve this community that is greatly underserved. Juarez is one of the most dangerous cities in the world, and it's cartel run, and it's, scary and dangerous and all of the things. And we're there to serve kids at a church. So, the idea of like spiritual warfare, or the idea of like I'm being attacked by forces that don't want me to do what I'm trying to do here,
Interesting.
Is like I said, you think every thought, so that's not going to slip your mind to be like, well, is that possible?
And it's just like resistance. Is it?
Yeah.
Like that Stephen Pressfield idea, like when you get close enough to the thing you're supposed to be doing, resistance gets the biggest.
Absolutely. And boy, I must have been close, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was incredibly gnarly. Like it got to the point where it was just like, I was just sitting up trying to find a position that I'm okay in. And I would like literally just pass out. And then when I'd pass out, it was like, you'd set it off. And so you'd wake up and be like, like I started having hallucinations and just crazy, crazy stuff, man. Like, some stuff that made sense, some stuff that made no sense, some stuff that was like poetically, poignant. The vignette of pain, like just focused me in on these scenes that my consciousness couldn't create.
Yeah. Well, when you say that you started to find the meaning in this whole thing and you started to maybe label it as sessions with God, was there a moment where you decided to make that label, or was there a moment where God came in and said, class is in session? Or was it something that just kind of like gradually became the meaning of this experience?
I think it was just like, you're either going to huck yourself off of a bridge, which there wasn't a good bridge around there, or I might have, or you're going to say like, this means something.
Right.
This matters, something about this matters. And so I think it was just like, probably at some point when I was trying to go to sleep and I just had to get up, and it was just like, all right, in the same way that like when you have to get up for the gym, you've committed to going, it's early in the morning or whenever, like there's a lot of times you don't want to go, you must go, and because you're called, right? And so I just snapped to it, like, all right, I'm ready. I don't know that there was like a single moment. I'm sure there was, but even all of those nights were such a blur. The pastor there gave me a little area. He's like, hey, you can come over here. He had after that first night, he's like, I have a recliner. Would that help? which turns out didn't help at like when he first put me in it, it helped. I got stuck in the recliner. It was very hilarious. I'm like, dude, 2 weeks ago, I back squatted 400 pounds and now I'm stuck in a recliner. You know, I was like, I'm winning CrossFit workouts and now this recliner has destroyed me.
Yeah.
You know, before we went during our fundraiser, we did the rollathon, rolled 25 5-minute rounds straight. And now I'm stuck in a recliner, like completely destroyed by this recliner.
Yeah.
So funny, dude. Because it would like, you'd lean it back and it would stretch you out, but then it would like pull you, you know, a little bit farther than you could reach the button, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so then I'm like, oh, okay. And then I would lean this way because that's how, like, where I could let off the pain.
Yeah.
So I'd lean this way and I would lay there and then I fell asleep there. And then I woke up, I'm like, oh. And then I couldn't, no chance I'm moving this way. Can't move that way. But I'm leaned back and it's like got my feet up too, right? Like you're like, I'm like, I can't sit up because there's like resistance. Like my legs don't have anywhere to,
right.
You know, dude, it's just, it was so funny. God had to be giggling at me. Right. If we could have I wish I would have set up a camera in the corner because it would have been hilarious, but that wasn't hilarious in the moment.
Right.
And, you know, when I finally made the decision to when I had to stand up, it felt like I was ripping my back apart. Mm-hmm. Felt like, anyway.
I called you last week kind of on a whim to check in. I'd seen all the stuff that was going on with your neck and I had some stuff going on too. And, I remember I asked you during the time, I was like, what is, you know, I know that you've made a meaning out of this, but what was that thing? And you're like, well, I think it was to bring me like closer to God and to start looking towards some of that as being, being the thing. And I'm curious, like reflecting on that now, one of the things I loved about what you told me is like, it's one of the last places that people go and they wait until people are really down bad and all of that kind of stuff. But you're talking about maybe starting there instead. So I'm curious how you reflect on that now that you've been in it for as long as you have.
Yeah. Talking about like going to God is like the last place. Yeah. Because when you can't help yourself and no one else can help you, like, what do you got? You know, that's when people go, well, hello, you know, knock, knock. Are you there? And, it's crazy too, because it's like, it's the last place you go and it's also the first place you leave, which is a really scary thought for me in this moment. And I'll get to your question, but it's a scary thought for me. So now I'm scheduled for surgery to get out of this, which is exciting, right? But also just like, it's almost like some Stockholm syndrome of like I'm gleaning so much value and being able to see myself in such a acute experiential light. It's almost like, have you seen that, like the meme where the little lamb, the little sheep, they like yank it out of the crevice. It's like stuck in the crevice and they get it out and it's like boing, boing, boing. And it just jumps right back in.
Yep.
That's what I'm afraid of. Right. So, yeah, sorry. What was the question again?
Just keep riffing on that. Cause I think it's going to get us there.
Well, yeah. So like when you arrive there, you kind of arrive in this place where you're like, there's some shame because you're like, hey God, the last time I chatted with you, and usually it's like, was when you got me out of this, when I asked you to help me get out of this thing. And then as soon as I got out, you didn't hear from me again, did you?
Yeah.
You know, it's like your parents, like when you're down in the dumps and you got to, you know, you go there to raid their fridge kind of thing. And you're like, oh, thanks. I needed you. I love you guys so much. Thank you. And then you're doing good and you don't drop by to say, what's up, you know, or any relationship like that. And, you know, and you show up and you're like, God, I really need you right now. I really could use your help. Or, you know, what's going on? Like, what is this punishment about? What are you bringing me here for? Yeah, and I think when you ask that question honestly, when you show up and you say, oh, God, what am I here for? What is this experience? What is my purpose in this place? You get an answer. you know, and a big part of the experience down there, I was thinking about this and just the parallel of like Spanish. So my Spanish is it's okay, right? I've taught jiu-jitsu in Mexico since 2013. So that's mostly where I learned, right? Was teaching and talking and having conversations, just being in immersion. And when you're in immersion, so like when you leave, it all goes away. So you get back to Mexico, all of a sudden, like people are talking real fast and like, I'm not sure what he said. Maybe I know what he said, but I'm not sure. I can't tell you for sure.
Yeah.
But after even just a few days, you're starting to converse. And at the very least, like what you said, like, I know what you're telling me to do. I know what you meant, or I can listen to a conversation and I can hear the conversation. Maybe I can't speak it fluently like they can, but I can hear it and I know what they mean. And I think that conversation, that is the same with anything. And it is certainly true with your conversations with God and your interactions with God. When you are immersed in it and you're doing it constantly, you learn to hear, you learn to listen. You're able to interpret, and it gets to a point where you're like, it's as clear as this conversation between you and I.
Right.
But before that, right? Like when you leave it, you fall out of practice with that thing.
When things start going good again.
Yeah, things start going good. I'm not talking to God, you know. Maybe every once in a while, I'm like, oh, thank God. Like, oh yeah, God, right? But you're not in depth in that conversation. Yeah. So learning to like being in that place, being in complete immersion where like he's the only one to talk to. There's only one voice. You actually start hearing the voice. I start hearing the voice. Like, and you ask, why am I here? And the answer shows up. And it's not this thunderous voice, Brady, you're, you know, you're here to suffer at my hand. God sounds like Sauron. It's just like on your heart, you know, you're like, well, dude, these things, you know, what about this over here? Why are you acting like that? What about this over here? Why is this way? What about this promise you've made to yourself? Why have you not done that? What about this thing you said you'd stop doing? What about this thing you said you'd start doing?
Right.
And everything is put directly on your heart and you're like, yeah, I don't know. And then you're like, okay, this is like, it's not punishment because it's such a blessing to have it put in front of you in a way that you can hear it, in a way that you can't be like, oh yeah, I got it, and walk away.
Right.
Which is what we do with most of the things that are put in front of us. Right. Even like, you know, we were having the conversation, like, you know, you have the great benefit of knowing your calling, knowing the things that you are called to do. And a lot of times we go, yeah, but familiarity's over here.
Right.
And I'm going to go get in that spot. And we do that, man. And in that time, like, I'm no different. I didn't stay in because I was strong, you know, I stayed in because I couldn't get out.
Yeah.
And when you can't get out and you try every exit door, eventually you just have to face the demon you're locked in the room with.
Right.
You know, the demons that you're locked in the room with. And that's what it was, man. That's what those sessions became. It became me looking at every part of my life that I wasn't showing up for, every part of me that I wasn't bringing to life. And it's heavy even now, like, even, you know, talking about this is hard because I'm thinking about all the things that were in that room, you know, all the things that were prevalent. People, you know, like some people go have a psychedelic experience and they have a very similar experience. I imagine like what I was experiencing with like the sleep deprivation and the pain and all of that.
And the hallucinations too.
And all of that was crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, was crazy. And, yeah. And so you think back to it and you're like, oh, this is not a joke. It's funny. I remember, actually, I probably shouldn't tell that story. I had a friend who, drank some mushroom tea one time, and he told me this story about how, like, there was a voice there trying to convince him to kill himself.
Wow.
And I was like, I made some joke about it, you know, because it was kind of funny to me. And he like looked at me. He was a jokester too. Like, he was hilarious, you know. He never took anything seriously. And I made a joke about it, and he looked at me. He was like, "Don't joke about that." And it's like, I'm like, "Oh, dude, what you went through is for real." Like something that was sketchy for you. So anyway, yeah. I spent some time in that immersion, learning the language and my ability to hear God's message, my ability to hear. And, like some people are going to hear me say God's message and, okay, dude, blank. Like, just say, what am I here for? And something's going to show up on your heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the more we can learn to listen like this, instead of to all this noise in the world, like that was the message, right? That was the message. Like, hey, you're listening, you got the wrong inputs,
When you were thinking with your head, what's the difference for you when you notice that you're thinking from your head instead of thinking from your heart?
Oh, we think about what's next. We think about all the things that people tell us are important. We think about like, well, what's, it's all very myopic. It's all very short-sighted and sensual. Like what's my next meal? What's my next exciting thing? What's my next things that gets me validated for X reason? How do I be cool here? What should I wear? What's this? Like all these things that distract us from our purpose. And not that those things aren't, perfectly relevant and appropriate thoughts, but on top of what foundation, and when we're not having foundational thoughts, we're just stacking bricks on sand. Right. And so that brought me to these foundational thoughts, these foundational meditations that just were like, that I just wouldn't have visited any other way. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not that these messages weren't right in front of me. It's not like all of these things weren't right in front of me all the time while things are going good, or even while things are going kind of bad. Cause like I said, I've been dealing with this all year long. Right. Mm-hmm. But I can do something else to distract myself. I can go work out. And even in, like you got to do positive things. There's still distractions. Like positive things can be idols. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a story, the story of Jonah I shared with you a little bit in the Bible. And he is avoiding his call. He's avoiding what he's supposed to do. And the weather gets real bad, right? He ends up in the belly of a whale. And I think that's what happens, man. I think when we avoid what we're called to do, when we avoid that thing, things just get worse. And some people show up and say, some people find that spot where they go, God, what do I do? And some people just keep running, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And for me, dude, like that was as bad as it's ever gotten. I was, my heart didn't hurt, like I wasn't heartbroken, but as far as physical pain, yikes, dude, that was as bad as it got. And it was just, it was poignant. Yeah.
That piece of running for me, I wrote a meditation on that not too long ago that I think I shared on here before, but the whole thing was I had this idea while I was in a session with Summer that we kind of came to together, and it was this question.
Shout out to Summer.
She's actually coming on tomorrow, which would be cool.
Nice.
Yeah. But had this thought that like we run away from this question, like, what are you running from? And if somebody asks you, what are you running from? We bow up all of a sudden and go, oh, I'm not running from anything, dude. I'm 10 toes down. I won't run from anything. We have this tough guy response to it. But the reality of the situation in so many ways is that we're running from a lot of different things at the same time. And I think some of them are probably noble things to run from. If you grew up in poverty and you're running away from that because of something else, or if you're running away from the abuse that you faced or whatever, right? But I think that a lot of times we spend so much time running and we don't stop to examine why. We don't know if it's because like we're running because there's this huge scary cat behind us and it's going to get us and it's like actually a problem. Or if we turn around sometimes it's like, well, that cat's kind of fat and slow and not really much of an issue, is it? Maybe I should slow down a little bit. And we spend like this time exerting this energy and running away from these things that we never look back to go like, is this worth running from? Is it worth the amount of energy? Am I running from it the right way? Am I going in the right direction? And I think that it's like, it's worth stopping and looking backwards and saying like, what are we running from in the first place? Like, do we have to be running so hard? Because it starts to assign meaning to the running that you're doing. 'Cause sometimes you look back and it's like, oh yeah, that's a really terrible, fast, scary cat. Going to keep going. But at least now you've got meaning to that suffering or meaning to that exhaustion that you're running.
Yeah. And the question is, can you get away from that cat? Because in my experience with running, bro, I've probably ridden my motorcycle 500,000 miles.
Yeah.
You know, like I've worked through a lot of things on that bike, but I never got away from a damn thing. You know what I'm saying? It comes with you. That cat's on your back, dude. That cat is you, right? I think a better question maybe is like, what are we running toward? And if we can't answer that question, and that was really like, that was the prevailing message of these sessions, has been the prevailing message. As of late, it has gotten a little bit, I'm so tired, you know, and I'm in less pain. It's less just poignant. Like those sessions down there for sure were just like, I was all in, right?
Yeah.
But the prevailing message of these sessions are what matters, what's important, right? And so understanding what we're running toward really matters, and understanding that like running from it's just not a posture. You know, it's not a posture that there's survival, right? But running toward is always going to be a temporary solution, right? Because we don't outrun demons. We don't outrun these stories that we're trying to get away from. We don't outrun these experiences. You just don't.
Yeah.
That, you know, I have a brand called GoFastDontDie. And it's there is no speed or distance you run to get away from yourself. So, answering what matters, answering what am I running toward is so much more beneficial. You know, answering the question of who am I called to be? And I think like that's been the biggest thing is I'm like, man, we got to answer that, because in the world that we live in, where there are infinite directions that we can go, infinite paths we can choose, infinite people we can choose to engage with, infinite, careers we could pursue, jobs we could do, projects we could take on. There's a million distractions. There's a billion distractions, right? And our ability to decide what is a distraction and what is part of our purpose relies on us understanding what our purpose is. It relies on us understanding, like, and it's, you know, through history, like you go look at anyone, there are, the pursuit of understanding what you're called to do is throughout. There's, the Japanese have ikigai. You've heard of this?
Yeah.
It's kind of like this combination of like, well, what are you good at? What are you called to do? What could you get paid for? Like,
what does the world need?
Yeah, what does the world need? Taoists have Wu Wei, which is kind of like finding your flow in the way. The Taoism is very interesting to me. It's so antithetical to the way that we live in the West. You know, like there are some, like Frankl would suggest that like you make meaning. You get to decide what the way is. Stoicism would be like, you know, you just focus on what you can control. Like you don't really get to decide. And I think the common theme or the common thread is alignment. You know, through all of them is like you're trying to find that alignment. And I've explained, I don't know if I talked about it on the podcast before, but my definition of success is being in alignment with your calling. Have we talked about this?
Yeah. And I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So when people look at success, they think money, fame, power. Those are generally the three buckets. And my thought is, if you're out of alignment with what you're called to be, there's no level of money, fame, and power that can make you successful. And if you're in alignment, there is no lack of money, fame, power that can make you unsuccessful. But if we don't pursue or understand who we're called to be, what we're called to be, what hill we're supposed to be fighting on. You know, people say like, this is the hill I'll die on. A lot of people don't have that hill. They have no idea. They're just floating, dude.
Yeah.
They're just floating. They don't have, you know, Fight Club talked about, we have no great war. You know, we're the pee and poop of usually I would know this. I think I'm sleep deprived enough, but you know, it talks about like, we don't have this great meaning. We don't have this great war. We don't have something to push against, and we all do, right? We just have to decide and figure out what that thing is. Yeah.
That that idea of what matters that you brought to my attention when we were chatting last week was super powerful for me, because I realized that a lot of times it wasn't my starting point for making decisions. A lot of times, I mean, you know, we talked about this, that there are these things that we are raised to have as idols or to have as goals or benchmarks. And a
lot of money, fame, power stuff.
Yeah, a lot of money, fame, power. And I think that there are some of those things that are closer to alignment, or some of those things that are more valuable or seem more valuable. And a lot of the decisions that I've made have been like, okay, well, I'm going to do the thing that I'm kind of called towards, or the thing that kind of feels this good for me, but I'm going to do it in a way where I can get all of the money, fame, power stuff so that I feel like I'm checking both boxes, right? It's like, I really love to create, and I love to do these things. So I'm going to create a media company where I get to have all of the...
Your shadow career.
Exactly. So it's like I'm brushing up against it and getting close enough to kind of claim it a little bit. But a lot of the decisions that I was making were not based in it wasn't the first question I was asking. And after reflecting on that, it seems like a lot of we have to make decisions all the time. We have to make decisions about what to do every day, about who we're going to do it with, about if we're going to keep doing it or not. And I think a lot of the times we don't take, at least I know for myself, I don't take the time to fully examine why I'm making those decisions in the first place. Just like you said, it's kind of like when I'm not intentional about things, it feels like it's this floaty, oh, well, this feels good right now, or this seems like the right thing, or this seems like, and it's kind of just this floaty thing. And my version of floating takes a lot of energy, because I'm trying to run businesses, I'm trying to build a podcast, I'm trying to write, I'm trying to do all of these different things. And when I'm spending all of this energy, it feels a lot sometimes like revving my engine at a red light, where I'm making a ton of noise, and I'm, you know, people are looking at me, and people think it sounds cool and it looks cool and all of these things, but I'm not really going anywhere. And, you know, that going somewhere feels like I might be standing on the path looking around a little bit, but I'm not actually walking on it in some ways. And I'm curious. I would love to, for the people of the world, to hear the story about this vision, maybe when you got handed this "what matters" question.
Yeah.
Because it's been living rent free in my head for the last week, and it's been a very helpful lens of looking through the world.
I've been paying a lot of rent to that story. And what you're talking about, you know, like when we're building with no foundation, it's the same thing as throwing lots of punches without planting your feet.
Yeah.
Right. Like you've been boxing, you know, when you plant and you throw, that shot lands, and that's a lot of times that's it. Right.
Yeah.
But you could throw 100 shots and not do near that amount of damage when you don't plant your feet.
Yeah.
Right. So when our feet aren't planted, we're not actually building on a foundation. We don't actually like start with what matters. And that's like I said, that's been the prevailing thought from this whole experience, is what matters. And it's almost like God put that question on my heart, you know, to say what matters. And it came in the form of this. I don't think it was a dream. This is like the third night. And I remember, I don't think it was a dream, because I don't think I was asleep, but I don't know what you call it, other than just whatever it was, daydream, night dream, night terror, I don't know. But what happened was so the scene was basically like, imagine super cinematic nighttime, the sky is like, there's clouds everywhere, and it's like lightning, thunder, lightning, all the things.
Mm.
And there's just these massive stacks of bookcases, these huge, made for giants, not made for people, 60 feet tall, and these huge books, and just infinite books. And it's just like these big rows, like I was in a huge library, but the library didn't have a roof. It was just like basically went into the skyscraper, stacks of books. It's like every book that's ever been written in the history of history times 10. And then, so like when you look down, this guy walks up to me, and he looks like Mayhem from the Progressive commercial. I think it's Progressive, right?
Yeah.
He's dressed in the suit, but it's all like burned up and torn apart, and it's just very like post-apocalyptic kind of vibes. And he walks up and he said something to the effect of, "Mr. McLean, I have some matters I need to speak with you about." And he's opening his briefcase. And I said, "What matters?" And he said, "Exactly. And until you figure that out, the pain will continue." And he hands me this manila folder. And then he folds up his briefcase and walks on. And I'm like, it's weird. Just like the wordplay of like, I have some matters to speak with you about. And then I said, "What matters?" I wasn't saying what matters. I said, "What matters?" And he said, "Exactly. And until you understand that, the pain will continue." And meanwhile, like, I mean, the most pain, I'm like, "Well, tell me what matters. Somebody better tell me." And I look down, then at all of this is, in a very specific order. I look down at the manila folder, and it says, "What matters" on the folder. And the folder, I never opened it, but it was very thin, like almost like maybe nothing was in there. If something was in there, there was a couple pages, a couple pieces of paper. And then the juxtaposition was, then I look up, and it's back to these infinite towers of books and stacks and stacks and racks. And above, like just kind of floating in the sky, was this little like lit sign that said, "Things that don't matter." So like the section of this library, of this monstrous, just God level section of the library, were filed under things that don't matter. And this guy came and handed me this manila folder that, as far as I can tell, maybe doesn't have anything in it. If it does, it's got a couple papers in it. It says, "What matters?" And so just like the chilling, I get goosebumps talking about it, the chilling message and prevailing theme of that, of that mirage I had in the desert is not much matters. The things that I mean, dude, all the wisdom in the world, like all the books, everything. I love books. I love learning. I love learning about everything. I get overwhelmed sometimes because I'm like, how am I going to learn about it? How am I going to know everything? And which is another crazy theme. I really believe that every bad experience, every sin that we have, every pain that we have comes from us wanting to be God. That's kind of a story for another day, but that's exactly what it is, right? Like there's the knowledge of good and evil. Here's the thing that matters to me. Here's the thing that I'm called to do. Here's my mission. It's in this little manila folder. And, I feel like we are called to figure out what is in that manila folder that is ours, that it's hand delivered to us. That's ours. And there's not much. There's not everything, right? We're not supposed to do everything. We're supposed to do something, though. All of us, I believe, are supposed to do something. I don't think there's a single one of us who is, just, oops, you're just here to be a non-player character, right?
Yeah.
Not a one of us. That's why we're depressed when we fulfill that role. That's why we're super down when we fill that role and we don't step into who we're supposed to be. Now, who we're supposed to be, well, what matters, right? And so my reflections and all of my journaling since then have basically been on like, well, what matters, right? And it's so frustrating because I'm like, well, we should figure this out way earlier, We should have we should know that we should set this foundation just immediately in anything. Even like I asked you about this podcast before we did it, like, hey, what are we doing here? And we wanted to give people tools to make hard decisions simpler.
Yeah.
And I think, one of those tools is decide what matters and decide what doesn't. And I'm going to consult my notes, or I don't know if you can call these notes, but so here's what matters. I think it has a lot to do with like storytelling, like the stories that we believe. What story is believable to us? And that will kind of guide us, right? Like we could tell ourselves a story about what our lives are supposed to mean, but if we don't believe it, it goes nowhere. But if we find a story that we could believe, then maybe it's a divine nod that perhaps we should believe that, right? I could believe that. Let me walk down that path. What do you stand on? What do you cling to? So like, what is the thing that you like? What is the hill that you would die on? What is the hill that you would kill on?
Yeah.
Right. And was just like, reverse engineer some of those things. What's the last thing you like stood up to somebody about? What's the last thing that what's the last conversation that you walked away from and you wish you would have handled that thing differently? Those are callings. Everything's a calling. Everything's these whispers from God saying, hey, this matters, like this is, I'm telling you, I'm driving you a direction. I don't believe this stuff is random. And we think it's random because like, oh, it's just random. Dude, yeah. So what hill will you die? What hill will you kill on? Is this that? If the answer is no, discard it.
Yeah.
Right, we got to get better at just like chucking stuff. If the answer is like, nope, I don't care. We talked about politics earlier.
Yeah.
Neither one of us really feels super called to go defend one way or the other and have these conversations and plant our feet to say, I am this color. Mm-hmm. And whatever this color says is what, right? It's identity politics and it's dangerous and it's not our calling, right? So discard it. Spend less time, trying to learn and trying to figure out all of this. Like you're called to something, and the things that you're not called to, you have to discard, get rid of completely, because the energy required for the thing that you're called is all of it.
Yeah.
So if the answer is yes, this is the hill I'll die on. Yes. Can I control it? Am I in control of this part of it? And if the answer is no, you discard it. That's a big part of, modern day stoicism is like focusing on what you can control and can't control. And if you can't control it, then be gone, 100% of your energy on the things you can. So if the answer is yes, proceed. That's what I wrote. My handwriting's so funny because my hand doesn't work. Yeah, if the answer is yes, proceed. Socrates said, to find yourself, think for yourself. Simplify. I think that we're called to study and dissect and understand why we're on that hill when we find it. We're supposed to spend all the time like, what am I here for? And we're supposed to look around and go, I care about this so much. This was put on my heart. Of all the things that I could care about, this is the thing that was put on my heart. Why? And what can I do for it? And where am I supposed to be? And where is my very next step? Yeah.
I think to that point, it adds conviction. I think it's one thing to understand. It's one thing to know what that hill is that you're willing to die on or which one you're willing to kill on. But I think that taking that next step to understand, why am I on this hill? Why does it matter to me? What are the things I'm willing to do on it? I think that adds the kind of conviction that you're supposed to be on that hill, and that it is in fact yours. That when it comes time to make a decision and you're faced with a very hard one, you've got that conviction because you've done the work to know, no, this is mine. This is me. This is how I make my decisions. So yeah, I think that's another level of that knowing, right? Where it starts to chip away at that cognitive dissonance, where it's not just that you know the thing, but you know the thing and you do the thing.
Yeah. And I think that some people are like, well, what am I called to do? Like, I'll be a good person, right? Well, probably. Yeah. What does that mean specifically? So going from like this shotgun approach, where like, I'm just out here being a good person, walking through whatever distracts me, whatever lane like that I just kind of end up going, creating a rifle with your intention, like going from the shotgun approach to creating a rifle. And I have some this whole time, I'm taking notes on, I'm trying to answer, right? I'm trying to be a good steward of the directions that I've been given.
Yeah.
And so I have this eulogy test, which has always been, something that I've been called to, like on your deathbed or at your funeral, right? What do you want said about you? What feels like you want said about you? And what's cool about that is, like, by that time, it's not about you getting the credit. It's just about the story being told of what you did. And so I think first of all, like, go to your funeral. Who's there? Who are those people? Well, that drops your focus down a whole lot, right? That narrows it a ton.
Which people should you be focusing on now?
Yeah, who's at your funeral? Who actually, like, you have passed? Who is, like, impacted by that, right? Who are those people? And because those are the people that know you. We can all tell a story on the internet, or whatever, and craft our narrative, whatever. But, like, I don't know anybody who's actually. I think I saw a meme one time. It was a grave. It was like a headstone, and it said, "Here lies Jeffrey. He led a compelling narrative." It's just like, congratulations, dude.
Dan Lee would eat that up, man.
Yeah. Yes. And it's very hilarious.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, in some way, yes. But the people who know you well, they know you. And so what would they say about you? And you got to ask, like, right now, if you died right now, what would they say? What would they show up and have to say? Are you living in such a way? And I did this a long time ago. This is one of the things I've never shared and will never share with anyone, is everything that I wrote down, all the words that I want said at my funeral. Because I can't go tell people those things. I have to go live in such a way that it evokes that response. It evokes those words to show up. And so I can always check, I can always find alignment and say, am I living in such a way that people are going to say these words about me at my funeral, or am I not? And that's a big marker for success, right? Like, so yeah, who's there? What do you want them to say? And would they say it if you died right now? And if they didn't, what do you need to change to have them say that thing? What conversations do you need to have? What, what actions do you need to take? I think so. So that's a tool for figuring out what matters to you. Another tool is, and the tool that was sort of forced upon me was solitude. We have so much noise, dude. We have so much noise, and a common theme, Marcus Aurelius wrote in Solitude. Jesus went to the wilderness for 40 days. I don't know a single person really who's not called to go out into the woods to think and ponder, you know? I know I am. And in those moments, like, there was no one else in the world that existed, because it was just me, pain, and God, And, if we can find solitude, if we can turn down the noise, if we can turn down the distraction, even if you can just practice right now, like, sit for 5 minutes and see what comes up to you. It'll be harder than I promise it's harder than it sounds. Yeah. Anybody's like, I can sit for 5 minutes. You'll sit there, but you'll notice your hand twitch to grab your phone. You'll notice, like, you want to look at this thing over there. You'll, like, all this stuff, right? Me sitting in the doctor's office. I've been sitting in the doctor's office, and I haven't been being on my phone, because it hurts to be on my phone. It hurts to have been on my phone a lot less, which has been a huge, huge blessing in disguise. But sit without distraction. Start with 5 minutes, and then maybe go a day just in nothing. And it's funny how, like, this is becoming a popular thing, like this sort of dopaminergic reset. Like, people are dopamine detox, right? Like, it's getting popular because we need it. And so, like, it's always interesting that, like, the thing that we're called to do philosophically, or maybe we're called to do from a spiritual perspective, is backed by science constantly, over and over and over again, right? Yeah. And I, being a man who sits in prayer and meditation, and also loves listening to Huberman Labs, I'm always just thrilled to be like, yep, all these things are just all in alignment. Yeah. When I learn to listen to what's being put on my heart, and I learn to listen to neuroscience, They do not contradict each other. Very rarely do they, and pretty much always they do not. So yeah, pay attention to what goes away without external input. When someone's not putting something in your ears, putting something in your eyes, telling you what to think. This is the great grift. Like, this is what's happening right now. Is we're being told what to care about over and over again. We're being told what to buy, for what reason. We're being told what to think about. We're being told what to fear, where to put our money, where to take our money out. It's just like, and it's constant whiplash. Like, there's even like the piece where, like, you can pretty much just, whatever you say, like, coffee is good for you. You can go find all the
or the confirmation bias.
Yeah, confirmation bias. Yeah. Where, like, oh, coffee's bad for you. Let me go prove that to you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, the coffee is great for you. Let me go prove that. Coffee cures cancer. You're going to find whatever the thing it is you're looking for, but why? Why are you going down that road? Why was that put on your heart? Probably wasn't. It was probably put in your ears, probably put in your eyes. When I was in college, we had a probably the most interesting is mass media class. One of the most interesting assignments we were given was to document every piece of media for 24 hours. Did I tell you about this?
No, but I've heard this. Yeah, you have told me about this. We just didn't talk about it on the last pod.
Yeah, so I was like, well, that's not going to be hard. I live in Wyoming. There's like 2 signs between here and where I live, and so easy assignment. And then, when we started kind of developing, like we started kind of fleshing out, what is media? What is this stuff? I'm like, dude, you can't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even get out of this room in less than a couple hours, right? Logo, messaging, like icon, logo, all of that, right? Yeah. Everything has a message to it. So we shut these and we, put some water in these by a waterfall. And then we just breathe and we focus on what shows up right here. Dude, that's your stuff. That's where everything should flow from. This is where the foundation should be. What am I called to? What do I want? And anybody who's trying to deal with a hard decision or make a hard decision should absolutely start with these things. What do you want? What do you want? Start with the end in mind and reverse engineer. Does what you're doing like lead to you reaching the end goal that you're called to have, called to achieve? Are you adding to the noise? Is what you're doing adding to the noise? If you died right now, would the people who know you best say the words that you want to be said about you? What do you need to change? What does it look like for you to find, what does it look like for you to find solitude and consider these things in private, in quiet, and actually learn to, again, like it's the same thing. It's like immersion, right? When I hang out around Spanish speaking people, I start understanding Spanish and speaking it well. Mm-hmm. When I hang out with my heart and my heart's desires and the call for my life, I start learning to listen to it and understand it well and learning to speak that thing. When I'm distracted by everything else, when I'm away from it, I can't hear it. And even when I can hear it, I can't understand what it's saying.
Yeah.
Right? What am I pulled to? Resonance. What's pulling me? Not what's pushing me. What is the thing that I want to do? When I get off work, I can't wait to do this thing. When I stop doing the thing I don't want to do, what is the thing I want to do? There's so many divine nods. There's so many little pushes. There's so many little invitations. There's so many green lights that we miss because our thoughts are colored by the lens we're looking through.
Yeah.
And so learning to remove that lens. And dude, I do not really suggest finding 10 out of 10 pain in Juarez, Mexico, in a church where you can't get away from your affliction. But damn, does it work, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think now about the integration piece, you said that one of the things coming out of this journey, if you will, that is a potential something that you might miss is having that thing holding you in the experience. It's like that pain is constant, but it's there and it's keeping you in this moment where you're not sleeping. You're biologically forced into these sessions each night. It's like this thing where regardless of whether or not you wanted to make the time for them, the time is made.
Yeah.
And so when you think about the people listening to this who aren't going to be, hopefully are not going to be in that 10 out of 10 pain, or they don't need to reach some kind of really difficult moment in their life to learn some of these lessons and start to implement them. How do you think about the integration when the pain isn't there and when you're not forced into it?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think like the worst pain is the slow burn, Cancer's not a punch in the face, but it's a death sentence. And I think finding reverence for your call, and I think that's why, this journaling and telling your story and making commitments and saying things out loud, like we've got to be more courageous. We've got to find ways to commit to the thing that we want most over the thing that we want now. And we have to find ways to ask ourselves, which one is this? When you find out what matters and you run things through that lens and you run things up against that, does this matter? Well, what matters to me? What matters to me is that I'm on my way to here. I operate this way on my way there. And anything that is not on the path of where I'm going is a distraction for where I'm going. And we learn to recognize distractions, and we learn to call them out. We learn to say, we learn to do the hard thing, because the hard thing in the acute sense is the fast thing. I was talking to Mike, and Chancellor over here, he's kind of the hard-nosed one. He'll say things that are like, that's a little uncomfortable, right? Where Mike's he says he's the peacekeeper. And I had an experience down there as well, where God called me out for being a manipulator, basically. It's very strange, right? Because it's like, wait, God, what do you say? Manipulator. He just put this on my heart. There was this couple that down there that this guy gave me this, he wanted to help, right? And this couple that served the church, he came with this massage tool. He just put it basically right on my disc, right so on my. These, the guns. Yeah. It was kind of a subtle one. There was a little one, but he just held it there, and it was sucked, dude. It was so bad. And after 5 minutes, it was bad, and then after 10 minutes, it was worse, and after 15 minutes, it was getting much worse. And I sat there for about 45 before he finally stopped. And a couple times I said, hey, it's hurting a lot. It's really bad. It's getting bad. And he's like, oh, okay. And he just didn't understand. He took that to mean I'll try harder. I'll try better. I'll move, Yeah. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it ended with them trying to trying to help me put my hoodie on, which was hilarious if I could watch again. But in the moment, it was I was back to that, trying to keep myself conscious, because they're yanking on it. I'm I got my arms in here, and I had already gone through 40 minutes of just ouch. And they're trying to yank it down, and they're pulling on my neck, dude. And it was just so bad. And I went and sat down, finally, I dropped some money in their bag, just as a thank you. And I went and sat down. I'm convulsing in pain, trying to catch my breath, because I was it was so bad for so long. And I sat there and I had the thought, this is again, I was so immersed. I just felt I could hear God's voice, or feel God's voice, or conviction on my heart. And I was well, I'm so nice that rather than telling these guys to stop, I would rather deal with 45 minutes of excruciating pain and just elevated inflammation that I'm gonna pay for the next 12 hours. I'd rather have that than to make them feel uncomfortable. And the message there was, I was so nice, and immediately I was confronted by this spirit that said, that's manipulation. That's not kindness. You didn't tell them the truth. Their intention was to serve you and to help you get out of pain. And by you convincing them that what they're doing was working, you were manipulating them. You weren't serving them in any way, which sucked because this like my one, like I'm trying to grab a hold of that and have some redeeming quality in this experience. Like turns out like, no, all you were doing right there, like even through all, yes, you paid a awful price for it, but you were ultimately just manipulating them because you weren't telling them the truth. You weren't communicating, and you weren't just being forthright. And so people should recognize that like if they're living in a place where they're being a people pleaser, you're not being kind to the people that you're serving. You're not being kind to the people that you're trying to please, even by pleasing them. You might be being nice, but you're not being good. And so, eliminating that pathway for me was super powerful, and eliminating that place I could stand, that comfortable place I could stand, was very convicting, as I return, like, no, you have to say the truth. You have to tell people what it is and what it isn't.
One of the ideas that destroyed my thoughts around being a people pleaser is that honesty is a recalibration back to reality. And what I found about that is that there's so many times that I would try telling somebody, I would have my idea about what the most beneficial outcome or the most, the best thing for this person would be, or for the situation or whatever. And so I would tell a half truth, or I would embellish something, or I would do this thing, just like when you're getting the massage gun, it's like, oh, it doesn't hurt that bad, or I'll just lay here and thank you for the help. And I know that you mean well, but really at the end of the day, if that person knew how bad that they were hurting you right away, if they know that the reality of the situation is this thing isn't working, his intention is to do good, and you're not allowing him to execute his intention because you're lying to him. And what I found about that honesty is that it's difficult in a lot of times, because a lot of times there's this sense of acute pain that lives with being honest. It's hard to go to somebody and say, hey, this thing that you're doing is like really bothering me. Can we figure out a way around this? Or can we figure out a way to not do this anymore? And one of the things that I felt like, just like you were maybe called out in a way in this time, I feel like it really called me out on like, who do you think that you are to know what the best outcome for this situation is? Who are you to try to protect these people because you have such a great idea about how they can live their best life, and you need to lie to them for that to happen? Because a lot of times, by just being honest, if everybody is playing from this true sense of reality, then everyone can make their own decisions about what they want to do in that situation. The guy can decide to stop hitting you with the massage gun. You can decide to stop being in pain. And I think that it's been one of the most helpful lenses for me. And when it comes to people pleasing, I think that a lot of times the best service that we can do for somebody is to be honest with them and give them the respect to make their own decisions about what the best version of their story is.
Yeah.
Because it's not for us to decide.
Yeah, because who's the, we're doing the same thing. We're making safety an idol in that, right? We're making comfort an idol. And we're saying, that's it. Like, let God be God. God is truth. There's never going to be a time where you need to tell, at least for any God that I believe in, right? There's not going to be a time where you need to lie for God's sake, right? So whose sake are you lying for? It's your own. It's your own sake. It's your own comfort. It's your own, familiarity. It's your own safety. It's not safe at all.
Right.
It's the least safe thing to not tell the truth, and to withhold the truth to hold up a status quo that you don't even like. You know what I mean? And that's what we do, man. Like, how's your day? Good, fine. Doesn't matter what's actually going on. I'm not saying you got to pour your heart out every single time, but when we don't root ourselves in truth, and we don't honor truth as the boss, as God, as like the North Star, we do a disservice not only to ourselves, but to everyone around us. And it is manipulative, and it's sin. It's wrong, and as much as I don't want it to be, because I don't like uncomfortable positions, I don't like confrontations, I don't like that. What's more important, your comfort or the truth? your comfort or your growth, your comfort or your friend's brother's growth, your sister's growth.
Yeah.
It's just not it's no longer a way out for me, and if you want your decisions, if you want your hard decisions to be simpler, you cannot let that be a way out for you either. It's cowardice.
Agreed. When we first set out to start this episode, we talked about giving people lenses or frames to make hard decisions simpler. Is this idea, you started to go down the road a little bit earlier, is this idea that we try to play God or that we try to become God in our lives, is that one of those things that's a helpful maybe readjustment or a helpful reframe for people to look at as they're in their lives or maybe notice about themselves?
Yeah, I think surrender the outcome, right, is that like you focusing on putting 100% of your effort and your energy on what is in your control, saying what you need to say, doing what you need to do, and surrendering the outcome. When we get attached to the outcome, that's when we start manipulating the process, right? That's when we start trying to manipulate to create the outcome. And that is a form of thinking where we can be God or serving, we're going to like that thing is in our hands. And it is not. What's in our hands is what we can control, what we do. And we should be honoring the truth in what we do. So when we start adjusting and switching and doing all these things, like you're being shifty, you're being shady. And you're playing God ultimately, which is, if you're a Christian and you believe the Bible, like that's the ultimate sin, right? That was the first sin. That was the sin in the garden, was to take of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, right? Of the knowledge of good and evil. It's not yours. That ain't yours. Yours is yours. Yours is truth to tell. So,
how do people try playing God? How do you see that as you were like reflecting on that in yourself and in the world? Because when I heard you say that, it was impactful for me because one of the things I struggle the most with is trust. And not necessarily trust in other people or that, I'm going to be lied to, but trust that if I control the controllables and do the right things and walk the path, that the things that are out of my control will work out. And that I don't have to be the one to like white knuckle my way to success and try to like manipulate all these pieces on the puzzle board and like do the thing to make the picture, that there's actually something else that's helping in that building process too. And that I just maybe have to get these ones in the right order and they'll take care of that piece. And when you said that, I realized that like, yeah, in a lot of ways, it seems like maybe I'm playing out of turn in some ways by not trusting, or maybe that I'm trying to play God in some ways in my own life by trying to control everything and white knuckle my way into whatever version of reality that I want. So I'm curious for you, like, what does that actually look like when people are trying to become God or trying to play God, and how can they catch themselves in it?
I think trying to control the outcome, trying to, I think we catch ourselves all of the time, and ultimately it's like including the practice of humility and recognition that you are not God. Like we want to become stronger. Why? We want to become wiser. Why? We want to become more knowledgeable. Why? What are all these things? Like, what is this thing that we want to become more powerful and more powerful? We want to have more, and we want to be more in charge of more in charge of creating things. We want to be more in charge of what gets destroyed, what gets created, what gets saved, what gets discarded. Or like we just want this control, and the more control you want, the more control you pursue. Oftentimes, the more you realize how little that you have, and it's maddening, right? We're not called for that. It's not our job. That's not who we are. We are not God. And the pursuit to become Him rather than becoming like Him, or when I say like Him, I mean like Jesus, is obviously futile, but is also just, it is the story of the fall of man, I don't know if that answers your question, but
I think so.
I just think when you recognize like, hey man, this thing is not, it's not for me to, there's not something like, oh, yep, there you go. And now I got it all. That's not part of what we're going with. That's not part of our experience, right? The only way for us to have it all is to recognize that we have it all through a greater power than ourselves, and that we belong to that greater power, right? Whatever that looks like for you is up to what that looks like for you. But to say that you are the greatest power, or to suggest that you are the greatest power, you are the ultimate, is manipulating yourself. It's lying to yourself. It's just not going to end well. It's not going to go well. It's not going to end well. It's certainly not in alignment with who you're called to be. I don't believe. Certainly not for me.
Yeah. Are there any, that story about the library of not mattering, has been like, that visual has been super helpful for me, especially the fact that the manila folder, I damn near want to make one and just like have it somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Yeah.
You know, maybe it's something like, you know, like there's football traditions where they like hit a sign on their way out to the field or something like that, like something to touch on the way out the door and be like just that. But I'm curious, have there been any other hallucinations, dreams, daydreams, meditations, that have hit you in a similar way throughout this experience?
Man, there were a couple really weird ones. At one point I woke up and I just had the numbers 80-10, and I was just like, there was this conspiracy trying to kill me, which it made no sense, dude. It was complete bogus. It was not nearly as poetic and
for sure
as that. But I was like 80-10 every time. It's 80-10, and there was like another part of me is like, bro, you all right? Like, what is going on? And then another time I thought big recliner was after me, like. Like
lazy boy's gonna get your
like legitimately like designed to just embarrass me and hurt me, and like I like legitimately having these thoughts, but just you know, I don't really recall any in this moment exactly. Man, I know that there were, and I could probably go look at my phone and pull some up, because I spent a lot of time just like literally just talking on video on my phone just so I could remember some of these things. But
is there anything that feels maybe like practiced at this point? Do you feel like you've gotten better at sitting in these sessions and better at with this sleep deprivation? Like, I'd imagine that you were fully night, thrust into it.
What it's looked like this week is pretty much every night I like fall asleep. I've been falling asleep at like 7, and you know, it just kind of takes me. Like last night I fell asleep in all my clothes, and I sleep for about 4 hours. It's been pretty much every time. And then I wake up and it hurts a lot, but I just get right up. I pretty much just get right up, and I go walk, and I'll go take my ibuprofen and my Tylenol, and I'll just hang out, and I've been listening to a handful of sources of information and energy, and, you know, like just preachers and podcasts and all of that, music, just rain. I've been writing in the journal. Been just going over to the gym, you know. Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty in it now, you know, and I'm tired. Like, even just us sitting right here, I can just feel myself just like, you know, just like, yeah, it's like, dude, the energy just drains. But yeah, man, I feel pretty disciplined in it. I feel pretty like, it's like I don't snooze on the alarm for those sessions, you know. Pretty much as soon as I wake up, I look at what time it is. You've seen my Instagram. Like, I take a picture of the ceiling and I go, all right, here we go. And it's been anywhere from like, you know, last night was like, dude, last night I didn't even make it till 11. And it was like, good morning. And then the other night it was 4. Fell asleep later. And then a couple nights it was like midnight. But, you know, a lot of days were like, I've been up since midnight. And I'm still in it. I'm still going. You know, like, it's amazing how much sleep you don't need.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. So now looking at, I mean, you got surgery in 2 weeks. Does it feel like a long 2 weeks away?
Oh yeah, dude. I texted him yesterday. I was like, hey, because they have like a text line.
Yeah.
This girl Cassie, she's super sweet. But I was like, hey, I was gonna just I like called and she texted, and then I texted. I'm like, Cassie? ? And she's like, hey, I'm on the phone. What's going on? And I was like, oh, just seeing what you're doing later. See if you wanted to grab a quick lamino, posterior laminoforaminotomy later. And then she's like, we don't have any space to move your surgery up. I'm like, okay, well,
worth a shot.
If you do, you get a cancellation,
Yeah.
if you want to do it after hours, yeah, I'm definitely all in on, I would love to make it sooner. And, I'm trying to take advantage of the time. I'm trying to write in this journal. I'm trying to, put together pieces so that I have something to go look at. Said, hey, remember when you made these commitments? When you get married, you put a ring on, and that ring is representative of something. And I've thought about what does it look like? What is this going to look like on the other side? How do I honor the commitments that I've made in these times? How do I say hey, when you say, hey, God, I won't do this anymore. I promise I will do this,
Yeah.
How do you show up and do those things? And the reality is there's probably a lot of those things that I said I'll do that I won't. And there's probably things that I said I wouldn't do that I'm going to do again. And by the grace of God, that's all right. That's all right. And because I'm held, because I belong, I want to do better. And I think that one of the themes, like I've said, is immersion and continuing that conversation. You don't leave and stop speaking Spanish so you forget about it. You continue that conversation. And just like anything, you are what you repeatedly do. So in this time, as I continue to have these conversations and continue to root myself in that conversation and in that connection, I think it's going to be a lot better, because that's it, right? When you get used to what is familiar, it's all about making what is familiarity is not bad. Maybe you're familiar with a process that actually absolutely works for you.
Right.
That is the goal, right? And so right now I'm becoming familiar with a process that doesn't really work for me. It doesn't feel, it's not sustainable for sure. And it is such an opportunity. It's such a pattern interrupt from what I had going on before and all the things that I could go do before, that I think the process of, the 3 weeks that I've been in it now, 3 weeks, crazy. The few more weeks before surgery, and then the couple months after surgery where I'm in recovery, and that, there's more than enough time for me to develop new patterns, develop new habits, to practice new approaches, and to root myself in courage and not fear, to root myself in where I'm called, not where I'm distracted, to put into practice everything that I have in there, and to teach others, to bring other people along. And it's not like, this is definitely life-changing. Like, it's been a life-changing experience, but it's like, it's just another chapter, it's just another thing. God's constantly trying to refine us and invite us to a better connection. Everything is that. Every interaction is that. And if we can start recognizing the beauty in that thing, like the fruits of the Spirit come from being in a place to be able to enjoy them, being in a place to actually be able to sit in them, and that it's all in here, dude, like when you can remove the distraction of everyday life and get in touch with who you are, who you're called to be, how you're called to show up. And that just takes practice, but life can get a lot better. Life can get a lot deeper, a lot more meaningful. And you can start to see, like when you start learning that language, like this is God speaking. This is God, like that's God saying something.
Mm-hmm.
That is like, like it's almost like this is God speaking. This is like everything that has ever happened in the history of ever has led to you seeing this little moment.
Yeah.
And we have those moments, right? I told you about the guy in the, in the airport, right? Yeah. This dude stopped in front of me and stopped right in front of me, just like kind of, I'm like, excuse me. He stopped and he adjusted his bags. His bags were falling off and he listened. His sleeve lifted up and he had a Genesis tattoo, and it was just the exact story that I had been reading the night before and had shared with all my friends the night before, or with our group and with the pastor that was down there. The story of I forgot his name. They named him Israel after the angel. Named it the story of wrestling with God and this like dark night of the soul. I think it's Genesis 32, 33, 33, 22, or whatever. Anyway, this exact story that I had been reading about wrestling with God was this exact verse that this dude had. And there's a little in that moment, I was like, dude, that is insane. What are the odds that you would stop in front of me, that your sleeve would pop up and it would be the exact story that I was reading the night before? I have no idea. But like in those moments, you're like, that is crazy. What's going on? Right?
Yeah.
That's everything. It's literally all of this. That's this right now. That's every experience that you have. When you start seeing the world through that light, when you start seeing the world through that lens, life becomes just like deep, dude, and meaningful, and it matters. And the farther we get away from that, where you see everything is just trivial, everything's just happening, all the things, there's nothing really matters, life just loses its color, Mm-hmm. So through this process, my hope is that my experience of life becomes much more rooted in gratitude, much more rooted in trust, much more rooted in experiencing through a lens not of desperation, not a lens of confusion, but a lens of gratitude and purpose and presence,
Yeah.
Yeah. This whole thing has been a press for presence, bro.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons that I named this show that is, it's the one thing that I feel like I've been in a constant battle with, is finding a way to be present, because my nature up until this point has been, to plan, to control, to hope, to just future cast so many things, and to reverse engineer a lot of those things to what I should be doing today. And so instead of thinking about being excited to have this conversation and excited to have a 2-hour car ride on the way here and excited to see this project you're working on before you get working on it and like all these things, it would be thinking about like, okay, well, we're doing these things now because we want to get to this point. We want to do this and we do. And it's just like, that program is really hard to run because I miss out on a lot of things up until this point. And so I felt like the thing that I was always fighting towards is how can I create a present moment? How can I actually enjoy this right now instead of thinking about how this domino is going to knock down a domino 10 away from this one? And that fight, I think, gets a lot easier when you ask the questions about what matters and figure out what that path is. Because it's like, it's easier to catch the things in the moment. It's like, yeah, my dream is to do this for a living and I'm living it right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the thing.
I'm on the path.
Yeah. And so
I'm in it.
Yeah. So I think that's, all of the things that you're saying about the way that you want to look at the world and the things that you want incorporated into your life after this that bring in a little bit more color. I think that a lot of us are fighting that fight, man.
Right now, the only thing I can think of is what Esau's brother's name is.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, dude, this was awesome. I appreciate you taking the time while you're sleep deprived. And
Oh, dude, I'm sure that I even like as we do this, I'm like, man, I feel like I'm operating on about 30% battery, and I'm excited to go back and watch this and remember just this interaction, this hang, and this time and this exchange. And I think that's another part of it, man, is like we put off our calling until things are perfect, right? Like we put off our stuff until conditions are just right. And the more conditions get wrecked for me, like the more I recognize that I'm not in control, the more I'm just like, run it, dude. Just run it. Let's take a step forward. Let's have this conversation. Let's do this podcast. And I'm going to go look at it and be like, dude, bro, you were sleepy, you were wrecked. And I'm going to have, to me, when I go watch this and pay attention to this, it's so good, dude. It's so good to be in whatever status, whoever is currently sitting at the table with us, brought to teach us something, brought to bring us through an experience of life. Like all of this is an invite from God. All of this is an experience from God. All of this is a blessing to be able to be in. And we're in it right now. And the more we can be in it right now, that's all there is. All there is this moment.
It's beautiful, man. Well, thank you again. This was sweet.
Love you, dude.
Love you too, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Be where your feet are. We love you too. Be in it.